She came to me, and she didn't fail me, and all of a sudden, all the things that I had been told about her completely flipped on their head. And I learned that she was compassionate and that she cared about her students. And the reason that she was so strict, and the reason that she disciplined the way that she did was because she wanted her students to succeed. Now, why do I start with that? Because everybody in the school knew who Mrs. Gerling was. Everybody knew about her. Everybody had to deal with her, right? And I got a very limited perspective of her before I'd ever met her. And the reason I start with that is because every single one of you, guaranteed, every single one of you has heard about Jesus. There's not probably a person that you know that hasn't heard about Jesus, but the perspective of who he is can be so differently shaped for each and every one of us, right? Some people might think of Jesus, and maybe you're here tonight, it's like, man, Jesus, God, he is up in the sky, and he is eager to punish me. Every time that I go astray, he's up there eager to crack the whip on me. He's not loving. He's not compassionate. He's the sheriff in the sky waiting to bring about justice into my life, eager to punish me when I do wrong. Some might see him as, well, Jesus might have been able to heal then, but he's not able to heal now. All that is over with. And so I don't know that I believe that. The perspectives across the board shift drastically. And so tonight, we are in a series called Point of View, where we're looking at different encounters Jesus had while he was on earth to gain greater clarity on who Jesus is. Because here's the reality. So many people have a partial or flawed perspective of who Jesus is. And so tonight, we are going to look exclusively in Mark chapter 5, and we're going to walk through the whole chapter to help us gain greater clarity as to who Jesus is. And so tonight, we're going to look at 3 different encounters that Jesus has while he's on earth, and it's going to lead us to 3 different points as we walk through Mark 5, and as it relates to what is Jesus' character like? And it's going to help us gain clarity, gain perspective on Jesus. And so we'll begin with this to set the stage a little bit. We are going to look tonight at Jesus through the lens of a couple of the disciples early in his ministry. Early in Jesus' ministry, we are looking through the lens of the disciples. And so here's the backstory to get us to where we're going to be headed tonight. Some backstory is that Jesus, at this point in Mark 4, is in the boat with his disciples, right? He's in the boat with his disciples. Here's the thing about his disciples. They were all professional fishermen, right? They did this for a living. And here's what happens. A storm comes, and the fishermen are like, we're going to die, Jesus. This is bad news, Jesus. The wind and the waves, they're too strong. And these people aren't just like, oh yeah, I just hopped in my little John boat and now I'm headed out in the sea. These were people that had studied wave patterns, that knew about the sea. And they were sitting there going, I am terrified for my life. Jesus, what is happening? And Jesus, in that moment, what do we see him doing? Well, he's taking a little snooze on his MyPillow in the back of the boat. He's taking a little nap, right? And these guys are like, Jesus, we're going to die. Help. And Jesus gets up and he says, be still. And in a moment, the sea calms down, the wind calms down, and the disciples are like, what is happening? The wind and the waves obey him. What in the world? And that's where we'll pick it up tonight as we look at 3 different ideas, 3 different characteristics the disciples would have seen and experienced that Jesus displayed. And so we'll pick it up. Mark 5, verse 1 says this. So they arrived at the other side of the lake, in the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus climbed out of the boat, a man possessed by an evil spirit came out from the tombs to meet him. And this man lived in the burial caves and could no longer be restrained, even with a chain. Whenever he was put into chains and shackles, as he often was, he snapped the chains from his wrist and smashed the shackles. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Day and night he wandered among the burial caves and in the hills, howling and cutting himself with sharp stones. When Jesus was still some distance away, and the man saw him, ran to meet him, and bowed low before him. With a shriek, he screamed, "Why are you interfering with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In the name of God, I beg you, don't torture me." For Jesus had already said to the spirit, "Come out of the man, you evil spirit." And then Jesus demanded, "What is your name?" And he replied, "My name is Legion, because there are many of us inside of this man." And then the evil spirits begged him again and again not to send them into some distant place. There happened to be a large herd of pigs feeding on the hillside nearby. "Send us into those pigs," the spirits begged, "and let us enter them." And so Jesus gave them permission. And the evil spirits came out of the man and entered into the pigs. And the entire herd of about 2,000 pigs plunged down the steep hillside into the lake and drowned in the water. The herdsmen fled to the nearby town and the surrounding countryside, spreading the news as they ran. People rushed out to see what had happened. A crowd soon gathered around Jesus, and they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons. He was sitting there fully clothed and perfectly sane, and they were all afraid. Point one tonight is that Jesus is powerful. Jesus is powerful. We see in this encounter that Jesus is all powerful. Jesus is powerful not just over the wind, not just over the waves, but over demons, over all the spiritual realm, over creation. Jesus is all powerful. Now, why do I say that? Because all throughout the New Testament, when demons encounter Jesus, here's what's not happening. When demons encounter Jesus, they're not like, "Okay, Jesus, we're ready to go. Let's square up." Right? And they're not doing that at all. They're not doing that at all. That's not the case at all. And yet so often, this is the idea that's presented. Like it's this tug of war between Jesus and evil. Jesus and evil. I don't know who's going to win. Is it going to be Satan and his army, or is it going to be God? And yet Scripture would teach a completely different idea. All throughout the New Testament, when Jesus encounters demons, they bow at his feet. They bow at his feet. And the disciples get a first-hand point of view as to how powerful Jesus is. That with a word, darkness is gone. They see firsthand how Jesus is in full control, has full power. And this Gerasene demoniac gives us a perfect picture of what sin in our lives does. Right? This man had gotten into something, or something had gotten into him. Right? Maybe it was because of a decision. We're not told. Scholars disagree on it. Right? But something had gotten into him, no doubt. And this parallels to us, where, man, we may make that choice to turn to a substance, alcohol, porn, an eating disorder, a sex addiction, you name it. And it always starts out like this. I'm going to control this. I have full control over this. I can quit whenever I want. I can eat whenever I want. I can do whatever I want. I can control this. And it always goes to, it begins to control me. It begins to control me. And all the while we sit back and we say things like, man, I thought I could control it. But now, man, you look back at your life and it's like, man, everything seems like it's just spiraling out of control. Like this thing owns me, right? And it's similar to this. In 2003, in Harlem, there was a man who went to the doctor. He goes to the doctor, and he walks in the office and says, my pit bull has bitten me. And the doctor looks at him, And the doctor's like, oh, this doesn't look like a pit bull bite. But he treats him anyway. Treats the man. The man goes home. The doctor is so concerned for this man that he calls the police. He's like, hey, I don't know what's going on. This guy claims that he got bit by a pit bull, but it doesn't really look like a pit bull bite. I don't know what's going on. Can you guys go over to his apartment and check it out? And so they're like, yeah, of course, we'll go over and check it out. And so they go to the man's apartment. They knock on the door. NYPD, no answer. And they do it again. NYPD, no answer. And so they sit there at the door and they start listening for things that might be going on. And what they hear is a deep, loud growl coming from the man's apartment. And they're like, hey, I don't know what's going on in there, but I don't think now's the right time to go intervene with something. And so they decide that they're going to go get a warrant, right? And so they get the warrant and they go back to the man's apartment, except now they're going to the neighbor's apartment. And they go, and what they do is they drill a small hole into the neighbor's apartment, the joining wall. And they drill a hole in the wall, and they fish a camera through it. So they want to see what's going on. And so they run this camera through it, they look around, and what they find immediately is scratch marks up and down the wall. Large scratch marks up and down the wall. So, of course, they're like, man, I don't know what's going on. And so they continue to search around until they find a 454-pound tiger in the man's apartment. And what's funny about that's not really funny, is the neighbors had called the landlord and said, hey, we don't know what's going on, but, man, it smells like urine beyond belief, and we don't know what's happening, and I'm hearing growls, and I don't know what's going on. And the landlord just kind of discredited it. And also, what the humorous side of this story is that this apartment complex neighbored a retirement home. And so here's what would happen is the retirement home, residents at the retirement home would call the police, and they would say, hey, I see a tiger in this man's window. And, of course, the cops are like, oh, it's the crazy tiger man again, we can't believe him. But what they discovered was there's a 425-pound tiger in this man's apartment, right? And the reason that the man got bit was because he was an avid animal lover, obviously. And so he had brought home a cat that night, or during the day. He brought home a cat. And so he thought, well, I'll be fine. I've got my tiger under control. And so he brought the cat into the apartment. And the tiger didn't think the cat was a brother or a sister. He thought that the cat was supper. And so the tiger attacked the man because he couldn't control it. And so the SWAT team came and ended up tranquilizing the tiger. Why? Because they knew that you can't control this animal. It's going to harm you. And Jesus, we're told, comes up to this demon-possessed man that can't be bound by anything. Anytime people try and bind him up, he instantly breaks the chains. He's walking in the cemeteries, right? He can't be possessed by anything. People have come up and they've tried and they haven't succeeded, and yet Jesus comes up and instantly he bows low. The demons bow at his feet. And for you, maybe this feels like your life, like you've been hurt, you've been abused, you've been violated, and as a result, you've turned to all the things of the world. You've turned to everything, you feel like. Or maybe you've just turned to all the things because you're curious. And man, I've looked at this, I've done this, I've smoked this, I've drank this. Man, I've got an eating disorder. Man, I've got a porn addiction. I've got anxiety that feels like it grips my life. Every day is marked by fear and worry and stress and things that, man, I just haven't told anything or anybody about. And I feel like I'm going to live this way forever, and nobody's going to know about it. And I feel like it marks my life. And so you hide all the things, and you hide them out of shame, and you hide, and you believe that, Man, I'm going to carry this forever. Trust me, I've been here too. And it all results as you buying the lie that Jesus can't help me. Jesus can't help my situation. He's not big enough for this situation. And this story highlights that there is nothing that Jesus isn't stronger than. And it doesn't have to define you. But you have to bring it to Jesus. We're also called to live openly, to be transparent, to open up. There's healings. James would tell us there's healing that's found in bringing it out. Not so people can make fun of you. No, that's not it at all. So you can begin to heal. Jesus is more powerful than anything that any of us are going through. And then we continue in verse 18. It says this: as Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. But Jesus said, no, go home to your family and tell them everything that the Lord has done for you and how merciful he has been. So the man started off to visit the 10 towns out of that region and began to proclaim the great things Jesus had done for him. And everyone was amazed at what he told them. We see this all the time. This man gets healed, and instantly he is going out to tell the neighboring regions, the 10 towns, about everything that Jesus had done for him. This is what Jesus does. He turns messes into messages. He rewrites stories to show off his goodness. So whatever it is that you're going through, Jesus wants to turn that into a message of his goodness for you to share with your classmates, your teachers, your coworkers, your friends, your siblings, your parents, to the world around you, to show the pathway to freedom. Some of the greatest examples of this are guys like Jonathan Pokluda and David Marvin, who, man, they have wrestled with porn and sex addictions. And Jonathan Pokluda once said that I was everything wrong with Dallas and a man. And yet he has gone on to lead, through Jesus, a revival in Gen Z, Gen Alpha, as one of the greatest communicators there is of Scripture. People like Brenna Blaine, who've struggled with same-sex attraction for years and still struggles with it, yet she continues to go back to God's Word, continues to press in when things are tough, and continues to find that God, your way is the best way. Even in my wrestling, your story, whatever it is, it's the key that unlocks prison doors around you. And Jesus is powerful. And we continue, Mark chapter 5, verse 21. Jesus got into the boat again and went back to the other side of the lake, where a large crowd gathered around him on the shore. And then a leader of the local synagogue, whose name was Jairus, arrived. When he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet, pleading fervently with him. My little daughter is dying, he said. Please come and lay your hands on her, heal her so she can live. And Jesus went with him, and all the people followed, crowding around him. This religious leader, we see, is extremely desperate. And now at this point, they're on their way to see the little girl, and then this happens. It says this in verse 25. A woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years she had spent everything she had to pay them. But she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. She had heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. Immediately the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him. So he turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my robe? His disciples said to him, look at this crowd pressing around you. How can you ask, who touched me? But he kept on looking around to see who had done it. And then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell at her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over. This response shows us Jesus' heart. You think about this. This woman was a complete outcast because of her medical condition. She had broken the law by being around people. She couldn't be around people. She broke the law by being around people. And let alone just being around people, she broke the law big time by touching someone clean. And Jesus' response shows us his heart in the sense that, in its point number 2, is that Jesus is personal. Jesus is personal. How can I say that? The only time in the New Testament Jesus calls a woman daughter is here in this encounter. It's an incredibly and extremely personal response. Why? This woman wanted the power of Jesus. She heard about Jesus. She wanted his power. She knew that he could heal. So she went up to him to touch his robe, and she thought, man, if I could just do that, I will be healed. She had faith in Jesus. She knew of his power, and yet Jesus wanted her to know him. Not just what he can do. He wanted her to know him. A face-to-face encounter. A personal encounter. He wanted her to know him. And the disciples, you got to think at this moment, Jairus' daughter is dying. She's close to death. And you got to think, if you're the disciples, and like if you're anything like me, man, I want to be somewhere early, because if you're on time, man, you're late. And these disciples are like, Jesus, like, hey, I don't know if you know this, but we got to get going right now. This woman is dying. What are you doing? You're stopping off to talk to this woman? What are you doing? What do you mean, who touched you? Jesus, we got to get going. You think about this. The woman was at her lowest. She was broke down at her wit's end. On her last leg, she spent everything she had to try and get healed. She was cast out from society, an outcast. She did everything that she possibly could. Everything in her power, every dime that she had, she'd spent to try and get healed. She did everything she could for 12 years. She hadn't been around people. She'd been outcast for 12 years. Most of you can't even go a day without talking to people. This woman had been isolated for 12 years. 12 years. In pain, in suffering, in isolation. She can't worship. She can't be around people. And Jesus comes up to her and says, daughter. Daughter. Jesus is pressing in saying, you have an advocate. The rest of the world has left you to die, essentially, left you broken, but you have an advocate. You're mine, daughter. You might feel alone. You might feel lost. You might feel broken, hurting, suffering, weak, lost at your wit's end. This might be your life right now, but you need to know that you have an advocate. And Jesus is sitting there saying, I want to know you personally. And he says to the woman, woman, you are healed. And it parallels to us. Jesus calls this woman out in all of her brokenness, in all of her pain, in all of her hurt, in all of her neglect. He says, I'm calling you out to me. And he's calling us out to him, wanting us to come into a relationship with him. This woman had no cure. Doctors couldn't heal her. The only cure was Jesus. The only cure was Jesus. And you're like, yeah, okay, I don't know how that relates to us. We all have the same problem. And you're like, no, I'm in great health. I just lifted 230 pounds on the bench press the other day. I'm in great health. I eat right. I do all the things. I'm perfectly healthy. We all have something that we cannot cure. And it's sin. Sin. You cannot heal it on your own. And Jesus is the solution. He is a healer. He is a restorer. He is a personal Savior, daughter, son. He says, I'm personal, and I want to know you and bring about healing in you. And the woman is overjoyed because she's unclean. Now you think about that. When something unclean touches something clean, it doesn't make it clean. Right? Like you go put your dirty mouth on a clean cup, you're not going to be like, oh yeah, and now my mouth is clean because I just touched this dirty cup, or I just touched this clean cup. And so therefore, the cup is clean and my mouth is clean. No, your dirty mouth is going to dirty the cup. Right? And like that's how this works, right? And so this is what, of course, the Jews, the religious leaders thought too. And Jesus says, I'm more powerful than that. I'm more powerful than sickness. I'm more powerful than sin, and I'm the one who makes you clean. You're dirty, I'm clean. You come to me, you're going to be clean. Continues in Mark 5:35. It says this. While he was still speaking to her, messengers arrived from the home of Jairus, the leader of the synagogue. They told him, your daughter is dead. There's no use troubling the teacher now. Jairus, your daughter is dead. And can you imagine being Jairus in this scenario? You think about it. You've just gotten word that your daughter is dead. I want you to think about if this is your kid someday. Your daughter is dead, and you weren't even there to be with her. You weren't even there. The flood of emotions that are coming over Jairus, you got to believe that, man, Jesus, you had to know. You had to know who it was that touched you. She'd been suffering for 12 years, Jesus. What was another half an hour? You can imagine the anger and frustration and the emotion and the sadness and just the overall heartbreak that Jairus is experiencing in this moment. That's like, Jesus, like you had to do this thing? You had to stop? I told you my daughter was dying, and you stopped and did this anyway. You just had to know who touched you. And it continues and says, but Jesus overheard them and said to Jairus, don't be afraid. Just have faith. Then Jesus stopped the crowd and wouldn't let anyone go with him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw much commotion and weeping and wailing. He went inside and asked, why all this commotion and weeping? The child isn't dead. She's only asleep. She was very much dead. And the crowd laughed at him, but he made all of them leave. And he took the girl's father and mother and his 3 disciples into the room where the little girl was lying. Holding her hand, he said to her, Talitha Kumi, which means, little girl, get up. And the girl, who was 12 years old, immediately stood up and walked around. And they were overwhelmed and totally amazed. Point 3 that we see from tonight is that Jesus is purposeful. That there is purpose in Jesus. They had all said, man, she's asleep. Or she's dead. There's no sense in bothering the teacher. And Jesus is leaning in saying, I'm going to do something amazing out of this. And it's almost as if Jesus says, I want you guys to see this. I'm going to show you that there is purpose in what I'm doing. Why? Because this is what Jesus does. He brings dead people back to life. To this point, there's been nobody else ever that has ever raised anyone from the dead. There's no one else who can. And Jesus leans in and says, I am going to bring about purpose in this. Even in the pain of this story, in the pain of your story, in the pain of our life, there is purpose. And we're told that he works all things together for the good of those that believe in him. All things together for good. That God is purposeful, even when things seem like they don't make sense. And man, I don't really understand this, and life is chaotic. And have you seen what's going on around in my world? Have you seen my grandma? Have you seen that friend, that teacher? There's cancer, there's disease, there's illness, there's brokenness, there's divorce, there's abuse, there's trial, there's pain all around me, Jesus. Can't you see any of it? Don't you know what I'm going through, Jesus? And yet he has promised that I am going to make something purposeful out of this. He wasn't the one that caused your pain or your hurt or that cancer or that disease. He didn't create any of that. Sin did. But he works it all together for purpose. Purpose. Some of you are like, no, he doesn't. That doesn't make sense to me. And I think it's really similar to this. Have you guys ever noticed or seen the Amazon logo? I think we got it right here. Right? You ever seen the Amazon logo? Most of you guys, your parents probably get this package once, twice, 3 times a day maybe. Shows up at your doorstep, right? The Amazon logo is designed to represent that they have you covered from A to Z. With a smile. And you've got packages all day long showing up at your door and you never noticed it. Or maybe some of you have seen Baskin-Robbins before. I know some of us probably like ice cream in here. I know that I do. Baskin-Robbins logo, if you take a look at this, Baskin-Robbins, in between the B and the R, there's a 31 strategically placed there to say Baskin-Robbins offers 31 flavors of ice cream. And see, here's the thing, that most of us, we don't see it. Like, these are things that are under our noses each and every day of our lives. And yet the creators of these logos have strategically designed these to bring about purpose. And God does the same thing out of brokenness and pain and chaos and hurt and trial and all the things of this world. So often it's like, well, I don't see the result, Jesus. I don't see that anything good is happening from this, Jesus. I don't understand why all this is going on, Jesus. And it's like, Jesus, where are you? Where are you, God? I'm crying out. Don't you even hear me? And God is saying, I promise that I am there. I promise that I will redeem. And I promise that I will work all things together for good. You just have a limited